In February 202 BC, the once invincible overlord of Western Chu, Xiang took his own life on the banks of the Wu River. The Han troops surrounding him had initially hesitated to advance, but the moment he fell, they threw themselves at his body like rabid dogs fighting over scraps, trampling one another and even turning their blades on their comrades, all for the prize of a head worth a marquisate of 10,000 households. In the end, after dozens of men lay dead, the spoils were carved up among 5 low-ranking officers. Liu Bang kept his earlier promise, dividing the fief of 10,000 households into 5 parts and awarding them to those 5 officers. Yet 2 telling details stand out. First, the 5 were not ennobled at the same time. The earliest was made a marquis more than 2 years later. The last had to wait over 3 years. The earliest recipients were 2 cavalry officers directly under Liu Bang. The last, who received the smallest reward, was a cavalry officer under a different general. Second, the 2 men granted the largest fiefs, 1,900 and 1,700 households respectively, were both subordinates of Han Xin, the king of Qi. Why should Han Xin's men outshine Liu Bang's own officers in reward? One crucial reason. By early 199 BC, when they were finally ennobled, Han Xin was still alive. Contrary to popular belief, Han Xin was not executed soon after the Han Dynasty was founded. In fact, he died in 196 BC, a full 6 years after the empire's establishment. He spent several months as king of Qi, just over a year as king of Chu, and finally 5 years living in relative freedom in the capital, Chang'an, bearing the title Marquis of Huaiyin, before Xiao He and Empress Lu brought about his death. Han Xin, the king of Qi, later hailed as the god of war, was, in a strictly legal sense, not Liu Bang's subordinate when Xiang was defeated, but an equal ally. At the same time, however, he had relied entirely on Liu Bang's recognition and trust to rise above a constellation of military geniuses and, in an astonishingly short time, conquer the whole of northern China, laying the very cornerstone for Liu Bang's ultimate victory. But once the greatest enemy, Xiang had fallen, the unanswerable questions loomed. What should be done with former allies? How should former subordinates be settled? How were the spoils to be distributed among the meritorious? And where on earth was this new realm headed? These grim questions could no longer be avoided, and they became the central drama of the Han Empire's first decade and more. After Xiang defeat and death, Liu Bang dispatched his generals to mop up the remaining territories of Western Chu that still resisted. He himself marched north from Gaixia to a small town called Dingtao. Liu Bang did not come alone. The main Han army followed, as did several allied kings from his camp, and of course Han Xin, the king of Qi. Why Dingtao? Because it was Han Xin's base of operations. The historical record tersely states that Liu Bang galloped into the king of Qi's camp and seized his army. Once again, he had used a surprise move to strip Han Xin of military command. This was not the first time Liu Bang had suddenly taken away Han Xin's army, but a closer look reveals many questionable points. At this moment, Liu Bang had not yet declared himself emperor. On what authority could he seize the army of the king of Qi? The previous seizure had occurred when Han Xin was merely the Grand General of the Kingdom of Han, and a king reclaiming command from his own general was perfectly natural. Now, Han Xin was a king in his own right, nominally Liu Bang's equal. Furthermore, what Liu Bang seized was not his old troops, but the integrated armies of Wei, Dai, Zhao and Qi that Han Xin had previously absorbed. Third, the forces assembled for the encirclement at Gaixia totaled 600,000 men, and Han Xin had brought 300,000 of them. So by what right could Liu Bang seize power? And how could he possibly do it? A truth more consistent with political logic is probably this. After Xiang Yu's death, Liu Bang, deeply uneasy about the heavily armed Han Xin, summoned all the vassal kings to Dingtao, to Han Xin's Qi army headquarters, ostensibly to honor the territorial carve-up. The forces were evenly matched. A precarious, short-term military balance was achieved. Liu Bang could not move against Han Xin, and Han Xin could not ambush Liu Bang or the other kings. Within this delicate, fleeting balance of power, Liu Bang engaged in intense political negotiations with Han Xin and the other kings. Liu Bang first delivered on his earlier promise to partition the lands east of Hanggu Pass. The son of a deceased ally continued to rule Zhao as its king. The former king of Zhejiang, appointed by Xiang Yu, became the new king of Huaiyin, with the domain enlarged by one commandery. A general previously elevated by Liu Bang became king of Liang, receiving 53 cities. Another of Xiang Yu's former vassals was confirmed as king of Changsha, with a greatly expanded territory. Then, Liu Bang dealt separately with Han Xin, reassigning him to a new fief. The official historical reason given was that King Huai of Chu had no heir. The old kingdom of Chu lacked a ruler, and Han Xin was a native of Chu. So he was made king of Chu. In reality, when Liu Bang had been desperate, the deal offered to Han Xin was, "Everything from Chen eastwards to the sea shall be yours," which essentially was the territory of Chu. Han Xin's Qi comprised 73 counties, but the Chu he now received was larger, 89 counties in total. It was a massive, juicy prize. It allowed Liu Bang to honor his pledge while effectively dissolving Han Xin's power base. As king of Chu, it was utterly inappropriate for him to continue leading the troops of Qi, Zhao, and Wei. Qi was converted into commanderies directly under imperial control, making the Qi soldiers the emperor's own. As for the remaining Zhao and Wei troops, were they willing to follow the king of Chu all the way south? Han Xin had no choice but to accept. Liu Bang had not broken his word, so Han Xin had no moral grounds to object. Besides, Han Xin was no ambitious schemer. His dream was simply to rule a domain, attain nobility, and return home in glory. The title King of Chu offered him the perfect opportunity. So a compromise was reached. In the early spring of 202 BC, on February 28th in the lunar calendar, in the small town of Dingtao south of the Yellow River, a coronation ceremony that would alter the course of East Asian civilization finally took place. The air still carried the lingering chill of deep winter and the acrid tang of a war just ended. The great Han Empire was proclaimed. Yet, utterly unlike later imaginations, this ceremony, which launched a 400-year imperial dynasty and shaped the next 2 millennia of Chinese history, was remarkably crude and without proper protocol. the soldiers and rough-hewn officers in camp used their earth-ramming skills to raise a rugged earthen platform on a plain beside a tributary of the Yellow River. The man, already past 50, of lowly origin, his face weathered by time, Liu Bang, walked past the ranks of fully armed guards and, under everyone's gaze, ascended the platform alone. At the altar on the high terrace, he read out an edict to heaven, declaring his identity and proclaiming that he had received the mandate of heaven. Then, holding aloft the Imperial seal obtained from the Qin dynasty, he declared himself the new emperor. He immediately issued decrees naming his wife, Lu Ji, as empress, his eldest son by her, Liu Ying, as crown prince, and his deceased mother as empress dowager. And with that, the ceremony ended. There were no songs or dances, no military parades, no popular adulation or secular revelry, and certainly no floats or grand processions. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that nearly all the vassal kings were present. They knelt before Liu Bang, hailed him with cries of "Long live the Emperor!" and formally acclaimed him as their sovereign. In legal and political terms, this was far weightier than any ritual. When the founding ceremony was over, Han Xin, king of Qi, became Han Xin, king of Chu, departing south for his new domain with a small elite force, while the bulk of the Qi army was taken away by Liu Bang. This is the logical political truth behind the seizure of troops at Dingtao and the vassal king's acclamation. It marked the culmination of 7 years of struggle since the uprising against Qin. Under a baptism of blood and fire, the Han Empire was born. Yet the empire's wars were far from over. After the coronation at Dingtao, Liu Bang did not halt his campaigns. Historical records state that immediately afterwards, a vassal king appointed by Xiang rebelled. This was, in truth, a fabricated charge. This king had once been a pillar of state for King Huai of Chu, but after Xiang enfeoffed him, he had stayed completely out of the Chu-Han contention. In fact, the original king had long since died of illness and been succeeded by his son. Would such a weak, survival-minded state, founded on caution, dare to rebel just when Xiang had been destroyed, the Han Dynasty was established, and the realm was settling down? Whatever the pretext, Liu Bang dispatched 2 senior generals who spent months besieging the kingdom. The king eventually surrendered, was dragged to Luoyang and executed, and his realm was abolished, converted into centrally administered commanderies. After this pacification, Liu Bang could finally lead his troops home. In the 5th month of that year, at a grand banquet in the Luoyang Palace for his officials and vassal kings, Liu Bang uttered his famous lines. In devising strategies within the command tent and determining victory 1,000 miles away, I am not as good as Zhang Liang. In guarding the state, comforting the people, and supplying the army with provisions, I am not as good as Xiao He. In commanding 1,000,000 troops, being certain of victory in battle and certain of success in attack, I am not as good as Han Xin. These 3 are all outstanding men. That I was able to use them, this is why I won the realm. At least at this point, Liu Bang's mindset had relaxed a little. He could openly praise Han Xin's military genius. He did not yet believe that he and Han Xin were locked in a mortal struggle. After this, Liu Bang established his capital in the Guangdong region and began building the city of Chang'an. He issued a general demobilization order, disbanding the armies. But a discriminatory clause was attached. Demobilized soldiers who chose to settle within the Guangzhong heartland would be exempted from taxes and corvée labor for 12 years. Those who returned to their homes east of the passes would be exempted for only 6. The choice was obvious. A few months later, the king of Yan rebelled. This was essentially a scaled-up version of the first rebellion. The king of Yan, originally a vassal of Xiang, had coolly assessed the situation when Han Xin conquered Zhao and immediately surrendered. He had even sent his own prime minister and general to command Yan cavalry in Liu Bang's allied army against Chu. At the Dingtao coronation, the king of Yan had personally attended and acclaimed Liu Bang. Now, when all under heaven had been pacified, was it remotely plausible that he would rebel? Even more implausible was the aftermath. Allegedly, the king of Yan invaded the land of Dai. Liu Bang led several top generals on a personal campaign and in a very short time broke through the Yan army's defensive line and captured the king of Yan alive. And the defensive line they broke? It lay within the borders of Yan. Only after the king of Yan was captured did Liu Bang order a detachment to turn towards Dai to mop up Yan's remnant forces. If the king of Yan had truly invaded Dai, why was his main army inside Yan? Some readings argue that the king of Yan rebelled because among the kings who acclaimed Liu Bang at Dingtao, he alone received no reward at all. Feeling furious and cheated, he revolted. Others suggest he had been colluding with the Xiongnu, preparing to carve out an independent domain with their backing. But the truth is submerged in lost records, leaving only 2 suspicious facts. After the king of Yan was captured, Liu Bang appointed a new king of Yan and a new prime minister of Yan. His childhood friend, born on the exact same day of the same month in the same year, the Grand Commandant Lu Wan, and his own brother-in-law, Fan Kuai. And who had originally denounced the rebellion? The king of Yan's own prime minister, the very general he had earlier sent to aid Liu Bang's forces. Additionally, there is one more detail. Because of his great merit in the Yan campaign, a general named Li Xiang was appointed Right Chancellor, with a status temporarily even higher than Xiao He, the logistical mastermind behind the defeat of Xiang, and took over the late Grand Commandant Lu Wan's role in managing national military affairs. After entrusting Yan to his childhood friend and brother-in-law, Liu Bang returned to Chang'an. En route, a small sideshow occurred. A former general of Xiang rebelled. This man had been a garrison commander under Xiang, who later surrendered to Liu Bang and was made a Marquis. Remember, at that point, even direct meritorious followers like Xiao He and Zhang Liang had not yet been enfeoffed as marquises. A surrendered general vaulting to such rank was extraordinary. So it was hardly surprising that, after wiping out 2 vassal kings appointed by Xiang, Liu Bang turned his sights on such former Chu commanders. History says this man rebelled because Liu Bang summoned all the marquises to a meeting and he was too afraid to attend, so he raised his troops in revolt. The same ludicrous excuse, the same terse narrative. Liu Bang personally led the attack, the man fled, and his fief was confiscated by the crown. Then Liu Bang issued another edict, ordering a nationwide manhunt for all former Western Chu generals still in hiding. This sent a chilling reminder down the spines of anyone with a Western Chu background. And there were many such men, including Han Xin, king of Chu. Just over a month later, in early 201 BC, as if following a rehearsed script, someone denounced Han Xin for plotting rebellion. Some claim the charge was entirely fabricated, but the historical record is quite clear. Han Xin had made procedural errors in mustering and moving his troops, giving his enemies a handle to pin the capital crime of rebellion on him. Who discovered this? No record. But the man overseeing national military affairs in his capacity as Right Chancellor at the time was the aforementioned General Li Xiang. And Li Xiang's elder brother had been, unmistakably, killed by Han Xin. It is easy to understand, then, why, once the denunciation was lodged, senior military figures clamored, "Arrest him, bury him alive." Only the Protector General of the army, Chen Ping, who also had a Western Chu background, counseled restraint and devised a stratagem. Liu Bang would pretend to go on an inspection tour of the Yunmeng marshes and summon Han Xin to pay his respects. If Han Xin came, he would be within territory directly controlled by the central authority and easily dealt with. If he did not, that was outright rebellion, and Liu Bang would lead the central army, freshly blooded from putting down recent revolts, straight into Chu. Han Xin hesitated, but ultimately trusted Liu Bang's character. He went to greet the emperor and was promptly seized and imprisoned. When faced with Liu Bang's command, Han Xin had indeed considered armed resistance, but considered himself without guilt. He truly felt he had done nothing wrong, that Liu Bang had no moral or legal grounds to kill him. He had even, in an effort to curry favor, executed a former Chu general who had taken refuge with him, earning himself a sordid reputation. But Han Xin, for all his god of war brilliance, fundamentally lacked political sense. He thought only in absolutes. He was innocent. Liu Bang couldn't kill him. He failed to grasp that between these two extremes, in the eyes of a statesman, lay an enormous grey zone. And navigating that grey zone was precisely where Liu Bang was a magician. On the very day Han Xin was arrested, Liu Bang issued an edict. Some men, having fought for years, are unfamiliar with laws and ordinances, leading them to unintentional crimes, even capital ones. The emperor, finding this forgivable, grants a universal amnesty. Who had committed a capital crime? Who was unfamiliar with the laws? Who was being pardoned? Could it be any clearer? When Liu Bang returned to the capital with his army and his prisoner, he formally pardoned the king of Chu, demoting him to Marquis of Huaiyin and requiring him to reside permanently in the capital. It was likely only then that Han Xin understood that his guilt or innocence, his pardon or punishment, all hinged on Liu Bang's political interpretation. This is the true meaning of the famous words Han Xin later spoke to Liu Bang. "Your Majesty is not good at commanding troops, but is expert at commanding generals." It was neither sarcasm nor flattery, but an honest admission. On the political battlefield, Liu Bang was a heaven-sent genius. Afterwards, the kingdom of Chu was dismembered into two smaller kingdoms, handed to members of the Liu clan. Combined with a former Qi, already given to Liu Bang's eldest son, and Yan, controlled by his childhood friend, the most crucial lands east of the passes, were now firmly in the hands of people Liu Bang trusted. He could finally breathe a little easier and turn to deal with a pack of howling wolves among his own subordinates. A full year had passed since the coronation at Dingtao. The military meritocrats had been waiting for their fiefs with desperate impatience. Discontent was boiling over. Seeing disaster looming, Liu Bang's chief strategist, Zhang Liang, proposed a ploy. First pick the general Liu Bang loathed most, the man who had betrayed him earliest, and then fief him, to temporarily quell the grumbling. Then, in February 201 BC, the great distribution of rewards finally began. When ranking merits, all the generals felt a certain commander bearing more than 70 battle scars deserved the top spot. Liu Bang overruled them, insisting that the Chancellor, Xiang, should be ranked first. The generals immediately protested, arguing with the emperor. Liu Bang then delivered a famous homily. "Do you know how hunting works? It's the dogs that chase and kill the prey, but it's the man who spots the prey and points the way. You are only those meritorious dogs. Xiang spotted the prey and pointed the way. He is the man of merit." With his characteristic rogue's panache, he shut down all debate. "You're all just dogs. How can a dog contend with a man? Xiang, no matter what, is my merit man." Behind this seemingly boorish logic lay Liu Bang's enormous determination to suppress the military faction and reduce the general's political voice. Later, when calculating the actual numbers, a difficulty arose. The leading general's cumulative merit came to a fief of 10,000 households. But Xiang, by any honest calculation, only reached 8,000. Liu Bang's response? Isn't that simple? Grant Xiang an extra 2,000 households. On what grounds? Years ago, when I was a lowly village head escorting convict laborers to Xianyang, the other local officials in Pei County each gave me travel money. Xiang was especially generous. Every single time, he gave me 200 extra coins. Is that reason enough? Han Xin, stripped of his kingship, lived in deep seclusion in Chang'an, frustrated and unfulfilled. Historical records describe him as resentful day and night, constantly sullen and discontented. The generals still revered him as the god of war. Even Liu Bang's own brother-in-law willingly knelt before him, addressing him as great king. But the proud Han Xin held these men in utter contempt. Equally dejected was another Han Xin, a scion of the royal house of Han, commonly referred to as King Xin of Han. Han Wang Xin, to avoid confusion. King Xin of Han was the very first vassal king that Liu Bang had installed and enfiefed. There must have been an extraordinary bond between them. Unlike other kings, such as the King of Wei, King of Qi, or King of Zhao, who had at some point betrayed or remained neutral, King Xin of Han was always tightly bound to Liu Bang. More often than not, he functioned not as an independent monarch, but as a Han army general wearing a royal crown. For a considerable period, he was the frontline commander-in-chief of the Han forces on the Xinjiang-Chenggao front, bearing the brunt of the seesawing war against Xiang Yu's main army. When Xiang Yu captured Xinjiang, King Xin of Han was forced to surrender. But this was merely a temporary expediency to survive. Before long, he escaped from the Chu camp and returned to the Han fold. Liu Bang not only held no grudge, but immediately restored him as king of Han. From King Xin's perspective, was there any more loyal and honorable sovereign to follow under heaven? Even after the Han Dynasty's founding, he remained Liu Bang's political stalking horse in many decisions. For example, it was King Xin of Han who was the first to jump forward and request the enfeoffment of the imperial princes as King of Jing, King of Chu, King of Qi, and King of Dai, completing the strategic encirclement and fragmentation of the non-Liu vassal kings. It could be said that Liu Bang's trust in and protection of King Xin and King Xin's loyalty to Liu Bang were among the rarest constants in the turbulent political storms of the early Han. Had it not been for later events, this would stand as the very model of a perfect monarch-minister relationship. But there is no had it not been. After dealing with the great obstacle of Han Xin, King of Chu, Liu Bang held the grand mass enfeoffment, making 143 meritorious officials full marquises. And what did King Xin of Han receive? A transfer of his fief from the southern Yingchuan commandery to the northern Taiyuan commandery. Yingchuan was simply too strategically vital, a central crossroads. No emperor based in Chang'an could tolerate an autonomous vassal king with an independent army holding it. So relocation was the only path. Liu Bang even felt that giving King Xin the 31 counties of Taiyuan, more than his original 20 counties, should have been cause for satisfaction. But King Xin of Han was different from Han Xin of Chu. For Han Xin of Chu, moving from Qi to Chu was a glorious homecoming. Yingchuan, however, was the ancestral land of the Han royal line, the resting place of his forefathers. But King Xin of Han accepted. He proved himself Liu Bang's most loyal warrior. Arriving in Taiyuan in January 201 BC, by February he had written to Liu Bang, "Jinyang is too far from the frontier. If the Xiongnu invade, we cannot respond in time. I request to move my capital to Mai, placing myself directly on the front line." Confronted with a subordinate so deliberately undercut, yet still so ardently devoted, Liu Bang could only say, "Granted." Here is a telling detail. Mai did not belong to Taiyuan Commandery. It belonged to the Kingdom of Dai. The King of Dai was Liu Bang's own second eldest brother. King Xin's move amounted to taking a piece of his brother's domain. Why would Liu Bang agree? Because both Liu Bang and his brother knew that, while the brother was an excellent farmer, he was absolutely no frontier-defending vassal king. Liu Bang had once taunted his father in front of his assembled courtiers. "In the old days, you always called me a good-for-nothing rogue who couldn't manage the household like my second brother. How about we compare who's more successful now?" The court erupted in laughter. Thus Liu Bang needed the formidable warrior King Xin to shore up his brother's flank. With King Xin of Han thrust forward beyond Yanmen Pass, the northern frontier line stood. To the northeast, Liu Bang's childhood friend. To the northwest, his brothers Dai and King Xin of Han. And further south, the powerful kingdom of Zhao, whose king was Liu Bang's own son-in-law. This was the northern defense blueprint Liu Bang envisioned. But neither Liu Bang nor King Xin, both men of the Central Plains, had a clear grasp of Xiongnu power. That autumn of the same year, the Xiongnu invaded. After several clashes, King Xin, so formidable in the central plains, soon found himself barely holding on and repeatedly requested reinforcements. When the Xiongnu, Shan Yu personally led a great army south to tightly besiege Marquis, King Xin of Han, while continuing to plead for help from Liu Bang, simultaneously sued for peace with the Xiongnu, hoping to buy time. Soon, Liu Bang's relief force arrived. Just at that moment, the Xiongnu army withdrew. The relief force thus became an inquisition team, beginning to suspect, investigate, and report back. Liu Bang's trust wavered. How was it that Han Xin, who had fought so smoothly in the central plains, was now so helpless on the frontier? Was something fishy going on? There was another deep-seated reason for Liu Bang's resentment towards King Xin. During this Xiongnu invasion, his second brother, the King of Dai, had fled. The records state the brother abandoned his post on the frontier and absconded alone back to Luoyang. Not only was he not executed, but he was allowed to retain a marquisate. Such were the perquisites of a family-run empire. But dynastic family rule was not yet considered a matter of course in the early Han. Someone had to take responsibility for the massive debacle in the north. Liu Bang chose King Xin of Han. He wrote him a personal letter, publicly disseminated. To face certain death without courage, to face certain life without bearing responsibility. When the enemy attacked Marquis, was your strength truly insufficient to hold it? These 2 points concerning the ground of survival and destruction, these I must condemn you for. This was not merely an overblown reprimand. It was tantamount to a final ultimatum. The letter was proclaimed to the whole realm. Liu Bang's aim was to build his own imperial majesty and cover for his brother's disgrace. And as for King Xin of Han, well, he would just have to suffer a little more. But every string eventually snaps. History records, King Xin of Han, fearing execution, plotted with the Xiongnu to jointly attack Han, rebelled, surrendered Marquis to the Xiongnu, and assaulted Taiyuan. He had not wavered when waging guerrilla war in the mountains, nor when holding a solitary city under siege, nor when escaping an enemy camp alone. But now, when he had truly carved out his own kingdom and commanded tens of thousands of troops, he was afraid. Why? Because the Liu Bang of the Chu Han Contention and the Liu Bang seated on the imperial throne were 2 different people. Back then, Liu Bang, for the sake of victory, was willing to give away half the realm. But after ascending the throne, he began calculating to consolidate power, seeking advantage for his blood kin, reneging, breaking promises, and applying pressure. King Xin of Han wondered, might there really come a day when even my loyalty and bravery are thrown away? That was the true source of his fear. The Xiongnu Shan Yu astutely perceived this fear. King Xin of Han surrendered to the Xiongnu. The northern frontier collapsed into chaos. Shocked and furious, Liu Bang donned his armor once more and personally led a massive army north. King Xin commanded the allied forces and had already overrun Taiyuan commandery, even pushing far south. Yet Liu Bang demonstrated superlative military skill. He pinned the allied army down frontally, then personally led an elite force in a long, sweeping flanking maneuver to storm the main base, routing the Han army. King Xin fled to the Xiongnu. Liu Bang divided his forces for a mopping-up operation, advancing all the way to Jinyang. He again defeated the combined Xiongnu and remnant Han forces beneath the walls of Pingcheng. Flush with confidence, Liu Bang pressed further north, personally leading a small force of elite cavalry far ahead of the main army. The result was a trap. On Mount Baideng, he was completely encircled by the Xiongnu Shanyu's main horde. Hundreds of thousands of Xiongnu horsemen surged from the snow-swept mountains, besieging the emperor so tightly that not a drop of water could leak through. This was, in truth, a mutual accident. Liu Bang had not anticipated the Xiongnu being so formidable, nor such a massive cavalry mobilization. The Xiongnu Shanyu had not anticipated the Han army being so tough, with a few thousand heavily armored elite cavalry far superior in combat to his motley horde. Both sides, in mutual ignorance, had met at the wrong place and wrong time. In the end, no large-scale battle erupted. After probing each other, they negotiated a ceasefire and withdrew. The Xiongnu allowed a way out, and under the cover of a snowstorm, the Han army retreated south in good order. Having failed to neutralize King Xin of Han, Liu Bang reluctantly marched south. Passing through the domain of his son-in-law, the King of Zhao, the ill-tempered emperor went out of his way to pull rank, thoroughly humiliating his host. The Zhao courtiers could not stomach this and plotted to assassinate Liu Bang. He escaped by sheer intuition and luck. The plot came to light over a year later, and the Zhao ministers and the King of Zhao were all dragged to Chang'an for interrogation. Every single Zhao minister adamantly denied the king had any knowledge. Even Empress Lu interceded on behalf of her son-in-law. Liu Bang angrily retorted, "If he actually became son of heaven, would he be lacking a daughter of yours?" But he could not convict the king, nor even those ministers, because they were Zhao subjects, and everything they did was out of loyalty to their king. Liu Bang could only demote the king to a marquis, while releasing and promoting a large number of Zhao ministers. He then enfeoffed his own most beloved son as the new king of Zhao. But the boy was only 10, too young to govern in person. Consequently, a frontier commandery governor was promoted to Chancellor of Zhao, assuming total military and administrative control over both Zhao and Dai. The life story of this man, later known as Chen Shi, has become blurred over time. But scattered fragments piece together a rough picture. He had been at least a mid to high-ranking general during the Chu-Han Wars, and had rendered great service to the Han Empire, notably leading troops to defeat the Xiongnu and the remnants of King Xin of Han, recovering the kingdom of Dai. During his long campaigns, he had gathered around him a group of men disaffected with centralizing power. As his merit and fame grew, suspicion stalked him. Reports concerning his multitudes of retainers, his extravagant lifestyle, his hidden ambitions, and his ambiguous relationship with the Xiongnu fluttered like snowflakes into Chang'an. Earlier, before leaving the capital for his post, this man had visited the Marquis of Huaiyin, Han Xin. Han Xin dismissed his attendants and, in a deep conversation in the courtyard, spoke some shockingly seditious words. "The place you are going to is where the realm's finest troops are gathered, and you are a minister trusted by His Majesty. If someone says you have rebelled, His Majesty will certainly not believe it. The second time, he will grow suspicious. The third time, he will rage and personally lead an army against you. Now, everything was unfolding almost exactly as the Marquis of Huaiyin had prophesied. Later, when Liu Bang's father passed away, the court summoned this man back to Chang'an for the funeral sacrifices. He excused himself on grounds of severe illness. In 197 BC, he raised the troops of the northern frontier in open rebellion, seizing Dai and northern Zhao and declaring himself king of Dai. A shocked and dejected Liu Bang personally led an army to suppress him. According to records, a major reason for the rebellion was that King Xin of Han had repeatedly sent envoys to persuade him. When the rebellion erupted, King Xin of Han also led his forces south to link up, and in the fierce fighting was slain by Han generals. The rebel general's wife and children fled to the Xiongnu, only returning to Han lands many years later, eventually receiving noble titles. The records also say that in that secret conversation with the rebel general, the Marquis of Huaiyin, Han Xin, added, "I will rise up for you from within the capital, and the realm can be seized." Thus, when Liu Bang personally marched north against the rebels, Han Xin feigned illness and stayed behind in Chang'an to plot. He prepared to launch his household slaves, forge an edict, and release and arm convicts and slaves, striking the undefended capital in a coup. But one of his servants turned informant. Empress Lu urgently consulted Chancellor Xiao, and together they devised a trap and executed Han Xin. Is this true? When Han Xin, holding massive armies as King of Qi and later King of Chu, did not rebel, he would rebel now? This has been debated by historians for 2,000 years. From a political logic perspective, it is very likely true. Because Han Xin's rebellion was not aimed at seizing the throne, but at resistance, not just for his own life, but the resistance of the entire old aristocracy, once they clearly saw the essence of grand unification and felt the ever-tightening noose of imperial power. They did not want to become the new emperor. They wanted to shatter this suffocating, centralizing empire. When Liu Bang returned from his victorious campaign and heard that Han Xin was dead, his reaction was recorded in the annals as he was both delighted and pitied him. Shortly after the death of the Marquis of Huaiyin, in the summer of 196 BC, an official from Liang stole away to Chang'an and secretly reported that Peng Yue, the king of Liang, was plotting rebellion. The reason given: when Liu Bang had personally campaigned against the northern rebellion, he had summoned troops from Liang, but Peng Yue had claimed illness and only sent a general with a contingent. Liu Bang was furious. Peng Yue, terrified, had then discussed rebellion with his subordinates. The justification was flimsy, and the informant's identity highly suggestive. More importantly, the historical sources explicitly state Peng Yue was indeed afraid, and prepared to go in person to apologize and beg forgiveness. One of his commanders urged him to revolt, but Peng Yue did not listen. That is to say, Peng Yue, the king of Liang, who had rendered towering service in the defeat of Xiang, not only had committed no act of rebellion, but had fundamentally rejected the very thought of it. In the entire purge of the early Han, Peng Yue is the only one the histories clearly identify as a wrongful case. But it made no difference. Liu Bang dispatched an elite cavalry squadron disguised as an imperial envoy mission to Liang. Peng Yue, having never intended to rebel, was caught off guard and captured. Perhaps the interrogation turned up no real evidence of rebellion. Perhaps Liu Bang retained some residual affection. In any case, Peng Yue was merely stripped of all titles, reduced to commoner status, and banished to Sichuan. But on the journey, he encountered Empress Lu and pleaded his case with her. Lu agreed to help, and then, behind his back, pushed for the harshest outcome. Peng Yue was executed, his clan exterminated, and his kingdom abolished. Empress Lu did more than just kill Peng Yue. She had his flesh pickled into a mincemeat paste and sent in boxes to all the vassal kings. The history does not record whether this was Lu Ji's own malicious initiative or carried Liu Bang's tacit approval. But it unquestionably challenged every vassal king's psychological limits. When the envoy delivered that box of meat paste to Ying Bu, the king of Huaiyin, he had just returned from a hunt. The record states he was therefore greatly terrified. Of the 3 non-Liu kings enfeoffed for sheer military merit, he was the last one left. Ying Bu was unlike Han Xin or Peng Yue. He had originally been enfeoffed as king of Zhujiang by Xiang for his military accomplishments. Among the generals who crossed over to Liu Bang's camp, Ying Bu had the highest starting point and had paid the greatest price. Moreover, on the crucial battlefields of the Chu-Han contention, though much evidence has been expunged, a careful analysis reveals that Ying Bu's contributions were monumental. So, with the precedents of Han Xin and Peng Yue before him, Ying Bu decided not to wait for his own demise. He began secretly mustering troops and stockpiling grain. Once again, a subordinate official of Huaiyin, bearing a personal grudge, betrayed his lord and fled to the court with an accusation. The historical account here is quite interesting. In all the prior rebellions, the court had apparently been utterly unsurprised. But when it came to Ying Bu, a true power holder, the entire court felt, he shouldn't be doing this. It's probably a false accusation from an enemy. The man most capable of rebellion had truly rebelled. And yet Liu Bang and Xiao He could hardly believe it. Which begs the question, regarding all those prior cases, why had the court been so absolutely certain, even preemptively striking? Ying Bu quickly dispelled everyone's doubts. Once denounced, he swiftly raised his army and launched a surprise attack on the neighboring kingdom of Jing. The king of Jing, a veteran commander from the Chu-Han War, was defeated and killed, and his kingdom was annihilated. Ying Bu then swept up the surrendered troops and stormed into Chu. The king of Chu sent 3 armies against him. One was destroyed and the other 2 routed. Chu was crippled. Ying Bu occupied vast territories south of the Huai River, a domain even larger than Xiang Yu's at his peak. He told his subordinates, "The emperor is old and weary of war. He will not come personally against me. The only ones I feared were Han Xin and Peng Yue, but they are dead now. The rest are not worth worrying about." Events proved Ying Bu's assessment broadly correct. But Liu Bang, now over 60, was physically and mentally exhausted by over a decade of constant warfare, even ill to the point where riding a horse was painful. He decided to send the crown prince on the campaign. However, the intense court struggle over whether to replace the crown prince with another favoured son had reached a fever pitch. The Lu clan faction adamantly insisted the crown prince could not leave the capital. If he did, he would either be killed in battle or framed and deposed. Empress Lu pleaded with Liu Bang, "Though your majesty is ill, if you force yourself to lie in a carriage and direct the battle from there, the generals will not dare to hold anything back. Though it will be hard on you, for the sake of your wife and children, you must steel yourself." Liu Bang felt a chill in his heart, but could not refute her. Surveying the entire realm, only he himself could truly defeat Yingbu. So, old and sick, Liu Bang went to war. As he set out, his most valued strategist, Zhang Liang, ill himself, came to see him off. Expecting a brilliant stratagem, Liu Bang waited eagerly. Zhang Liang merely said, "When you lead the army away, please install the Crown Prince as General-in-Chief, overseeing all military forces in the Guangzhong heartland." Liu Bang agreed, yet seemed to sense an immense invisible net closing behind him, against which he was powerless to struggle. Meeting Yingbu on the battlefield, Liu Bang asked the question, "Why go through the bitter trouble of rebelling? Why must all of you turn against me?" Yingbu answered coldly, "Of course, it's because I want to be the emperor too." The battle against Yingbu confirmed yet again Liu Bang's military genius. With the exception of Xiang Yu and Han Xin, no one in the world could defeat him in the field. The result was Yingbu's total rout. He fled with a few hundred followers into the kingdom of Changsha, intending to seek refuge with his brother-in-law, the king of Changsha. The king of Changsha pretended to receive him, then had him assassinated en route. Yingbu was dead. The kingdom of Huaiyin was transferred to Liu Bang's seventh son. The king of Changsha preserved his own fief. This small, weak kingdom would miraculously transmit through 5 generations, enduring nearly 50 years before its abolition. With Yingbu dead, and news arriving from the north that the rebel remnants had been mopped up, the realm finally seemed at peace. Liu Bang led his army home, pausing in his hometown before returning to Chang'an. Upon his arrival, countless petitions and accusations flew at him like snowflakes, with common folk even blocking the imperial carriage to submit pleas. The subject was singular. Chancellor Xiao He had been forcibly buying up farmland from the people within the Guangzhong region, stirring mass fury, and the people begged the emperor to punish him. When Xiao He came to greet him, Liu Bang burst out laughing, threw the petitions at him and said, "Lord Chancellor, you are really doing great deeds for the common people." This was the 3rd time Xiao He had defiled his own reputation before Liu Bang. As the empire's de facto chief executive, he had keenly sensed the ominous shift in court atmosphere. While Liu Bang was fighting Yingbu, Xiao He had again taken advice to seek safety by committing petty crimes like extorting property and taking bribes. As expected, Liu Bang was greatly delighted. Perhaps because Liu Bang genuinely seemed to be in a good mood, or perhaps because the ever-cautious Xiao He suffered a momentary lapse of judgment. At this critical juncture, he went further and presented a petition on behalf of the common people. "The area within Chang'an is cramped. Yet much of the land in the Imperial Shanglin Park lies idle. Would it not be wise to let the people plough and cultivate it, with the leftover straw serving as fodder for the park's beasts? For a Grand Chancellor to go to such lengths for the people's welfare indeed befits the eternal image of a virtuous minister. And Liu Bang's reaction? He flew into a towering rage. "How much did the merchants bribe you, that you dare lay hands on my Shanglin Park?" He ordered Xiao He thrown in prison and put in chains. This seems straight from the pages of a history of mad tyrants. Fortunately, someone risked his life to remonstrate, asking Liu Bang what great crime the Chancellor had committed. Liu Bang replied, "What should a Chancellor do? Attribute the good to the sovereign and take the blame onto himself. By pleading for the people like this, Xiao He is currying favor with the masses." This was a deeply warped political logic. A sick, feeble monarch past 60 saw not a loyal chancellor devoted to the state, but a partner with a power base as deep as his own, a CEO who held all the administrative arteries of the empire. To keep Xiao He in check, Liu Bang had even deliberately stirred up conflict between the head of the military faction and Xiao He. But besides Xiao He, there were so many other founding dignitaries from Pei County. If trouble ever arose, would they choose him or Xiao He? In his vigorous prime, he would never have thought this way, believing himself omnipotent. In his weary dotage, he could not help but think this way, knowing his time was short. He no longer knew who the enemy was, where they were, or what they would do. The remonstrating minister argued, "How could the Chancellor possibly rebel? When you were campaigning and he was left guarding the Guangzhong base, he didn't rebel then. Now that you've returned in triumph, he suddenly thinks of rebellion?" Liu Bang's last vestiges of reason finally overcame his fear of the future. That very day, he issued a decree releasing Xiao He. The cautious Xiao He came to the palace barefoot to express his gratitude. Liu Bang said, "Chancellor, do not stand on ceremony. I did what I did only to demonstrate to the realm that I am a depraved tyrant like Jie or Zhou, while you are a worthy minister." Beneath this petulant, self-justifying explanation lay nothing but helplessness. A small detail often overlooked. Just at this time, Liu Bang's brother-in-law, Fan Kuai, was temporarily promoted from Left Chancellor to Chancellor of State. Why would a charging cavalry general be appointed to the top civil administrative post? Because Liu Bang needed him to lead troops on a new pacification campaign and had to give him supreme status above all others save the emperor himself. So, whose rebellion was he meant to quell? During the pursuit of the northern rebel remnants, the Han army had captured a deputy commander. This man turned informant, revealing that the king of Yan, Liu Bang's childhood friend Lu Wan, born the same day, had previously made secret pacts with the rebel leader, deliberately dragging out the war to nurture his own importance, and had also been in contact with the Xiongnu and the son of the former king of Yan. That his own childhood friend Lu Wan was plotting rebellion was something Liu Bang could not bring himself to believe. He ordered Lu Wan to come to the capital. But Lu Wan claimed illness and refused, a carbon copy of every prior rebellion case. Even so, Liu Bang still did not believe it. He dispatched a high-ranking minister to Yan, both to welcome Lu Wan and to investigate. Lu Wan again refused, telling his confidants, "Only myself and the king of Changsha are not surnamed Liu in all the realm. The emperor is now gravely ill. The deaths of Han Xin and Peng Yue were all the doing of Empress Lu. I cannot return. If I go back, I will surely be killed by the Empress Lu." Tragically, the minister sent to investigate was precisely one of Empress Lu's favorites. Returning to the capital, he reported to Liu Bang, "The king of Yan is certain to rebel." Even then, Liu Bang remained unconvinced. But shortly after, Xiongnu captives taken at the frontier also confirmed that his childhood friend had indeed sent envoys to parley with the Xiongnu. The evidence was conclusive, irrefutable. The history records, the emperor said, "Lu Wan has indeed rebelled." The famously terse annals do not record Liu Bang's inner state at that moment. But we can fully comprehend the despair, the heart-wrenching pain, the unwillingness to accept it. Surrendered generals had rebelled. Former allies had rebelled. Past comrades in arms had rebelled. And now, even his own childhood friend, born on the very same day, had rebelled? Liu Bang refused to accept it, but he had to respond. He was already terminally ill, his condition worsened by an arrow wound sustained during the Yingbu campaign. Looking around the court, he had no choice but to turn to his brother-in-law, Fan Kuai. Fan Kuai might not be as skilled a commander as some, but he was his wife's sister's husband, a fellow townsman who had fought since the Pei County days, the brave warrior who had saved him at the feast at Swan Goose Gate. Who else was there? So, in the second month of 195 BC, Fan Kuai set out with a great army. Liu Bang, left behind in Chang'an, weakened with each passing day. A famous doctor diagnosed him and prepared to administer medicine. Liu Bang cursed him, roaring, "I took the realm with a 3-foot sword, starting as a commoner. Is that not heaven's decree? My fate lies with heaven. Even if the divine physician Bian Cui were here, what use would he be?" He rewarded the doctor handsomely and sent him away, resigning himself to his fate. What was he waiting for? For Fan Kuai to return holding his childhood friend's head? Or for Fan Kuai to clear his friend's name? He waited in vain. Fan Kuai invaded Yan with irresistible force. Lu Wan, who perhaps had never truly intended to rebel in the first place, was utterly routed. In the end, he fled with a few thousand cavalry and his family to the edge of the Great Wall. But he did not leave the territory of the Han Empire, nor enter Xiongnu lands. He said he was waiting for Liu Bang to recover from his illness, so he could go in person to Chang'an, explain and beg forgiveness. He too waited in vain. What they both awaited instead was another denunciation. In late March, someone informed that Fan Kuai had prepared. The moment Liu Bang died, he would launch troops to kill the favored concubine contending with Empress Lu and her son. Furious beyond measure, Liu Bang immediately dispatched 2 senior officials to race day and night to Fan Kuai's army in Yan. One was to take over command of the army. The other was to behead the traitor Fan Kuai on the spot. The men sent did not carry out Liu Bang's order. They simply assumed command of the troops and brought Fan Kuai back towards the capital under escort. While they were still on the road, the news arrived. On the 1st of June 195 BC, the Han Emperor Gaozu, Liu Bang, passed away in Chang'an. The two officials and Fan Kuai all exhaled in relief. They lashed their horses and sped through the night back to Chang'an to present themselves before Empress Lu. Objectively speaking, the dense cluster of rebellions in the early Han and Liu Bang's ruthlessly decisive purges were not fundamentally a matter of personal morality. The crux was that the entire Chinese world had not yet thought through how to choose between two diametrically opposed roads: centralization and feudalism. Both had played vital roles in the Chu-Han War. Had strategist Zhang Liang not persuaded Liu Bang to use the promise of carving up the realm as bait, unleashing the immense initiative of men like Han Xin, Ying Bu, and Peng Yue, Xiang Yu could never have been defeated so quickly. Yet without the steady flow of soldiers and supplies from a centrally administered Guanzhong heartland, Liu Bang would never have survived to see final victory. The bait of enfeoffment was a sufficient condition. The advantage of centralization was the necessary one. Liu Bang recognized this with crystal clarity. That is why, during the war, his repeated promises to partition the realm always carried the helpless air of drinking poison to quench thirst. But what happens when victory comes? Consider the analogy of Rome's second triumvirate. After Julius Caesar's assassination, Octavian, to combat the armies of the assassins, was forced to form an alliance with Antony and Lepidus, carving up the Roman world between them. But once their common enemies were eliminated, the Roman sphere could not possibly tolerate three legally autonomous warlords commanding their own legions. In the same way, Liu Bang's Han Empire was, in its infancy, a lethally dangerous Frankenstein's monster. The empire's western core was governed through a centralized system of commanderies and counties, while the vast east was controlled by feudal kingdoms under non-Liu military strongmen. In Max Weber's definition of the modern state, the essence of a state is the absolute monopoly of legitimate violence. In the early Han, these 7 non-Liu kings commanded their own armies, taxation, and judicial power. They were literal states within a state. Here we must invoke a key concept from international relations: the security dilemma. Did the non-Liu kings truly want to rebel? Perhaps the god of war, Han Xin, initially just wanted the title of King of Qi and a peaceful retirement. But in Liu Bang's eyes, capability itself was the most lethal intent. So long as military geniuses like Han Xin and Peng Yue held massive armies capable of toppling the empire, Liu Bang, on his dragon throne in Chang'an, could never sleep soundly. This was not a personal moral failing of Liu Bang. It was the structural death trap created by their two positions. As long as the non-Liu vassal kings retained independent armed forces, they were forced, for self-preservation, to continually expand their armies. The more they expanded, the more terrified the central court became. The more terrified the court, the more political pressure it applied. And in the end, this insoluble chain of suspicion inevitably drove the vassal kings down the dead-end path of armed revolt. So, Liu Bang did not wait. As one of history's ultimate political operators, he opted for a preemptive strike. He was precisely that perfect prince whom Niccolò Machiavelli depicted in The Prince. For the long-term security of the state, a prince must learn to get his hands dirty. With ice-cold ruthlessness, using intrigue, entrapment, and merciless military force, Liu Bang erased every imprint on that old covenant. He spent the last years of his life doing the dirtiest demolition work, personally digging out the ticking time bombs embedded in the body of the empire, one by one. As we look down upon this blood-drenched history today, we must acknowledge one cold, objective fact. Liu Bang voluntarily shouldered the historical infamy of the betrayer, sacrificing his personal virtue and reputation. But with those dirty hands, stained with the blood of his comrades, he thoroughly swept away the last remnants of feudalism from the path of imperial centralization. Before this, for 800 years of the Eastern Zhou, warfare had never ceased. After this, for 400 years of the Han Dynasty, civil wars could be counted on one hand. The altar of empire demands the richest of sacrifices, and Liu Bang, without a moment's hesitation, offered up his former comrades in arms and his own soul. On the journey back from defeating Yingbu, Liu Bang made a special detour to Pei County, his hometown. He feasted and drank with the local elders for over 10 days. These must have been among the last truly happy moments of his old age. At a banquet table in Pei, seized by the moment, he personally struck a zither and began to sing a verse of his own spontaneous composition. A great wind rises, oh, clouds fly high. My might has spread across the land, oh, I return to my homeland. Where can I find brave warriors, oh, to guard my four frontiers? This poem has just 3 lines, yet has been sung for over 2 millennia. Perhaps in that moment, it captured Liu Bang's most authentic heart. The storm winds surge, the clouds scatter. Winning the realm is easy, guarding it is desperately hard. It was not that he did not wish to trust, he dared not trust. The logic of the system made him kill them all, surrender generals, allies, comrades in arms, childhood friends. He completed the transition from feudalism to centralization, but at the cost of his confidants, his allies, his very soul. The curse of autocracy is this: you must suspect everyone. The Han Dynasty was built, but Liu Bang lost everything.